successful person is forced to pick. You must either be a parent or pursue further education. We end up sacrificing the brilliant minds of the present because they become mothers and fathers, but never professors. We also lose the brilliance of the future generation because every single genius is told to focus on their career and to never have children. On side proposition, we allow them to do both. So what does strongly incentivize mean? Two things. Firstly, this includes significant financial incentives, which means we'll ease their taxes or subsidize the education of their children, should they choose to have them. But secondly, this also means making parenting easier because we'll have childcare institutions and services that are available in case parents need to work, do research, and others. Two fundamental arguments. Firstly, the necessity for educated couples to have children, but secondly, the motion creates a stronger future generation. So first, contention for the necessity for educated couples to have children. Please note, the problem in the status quo is that educated people who want children currently have difficulty doing so. Children are expensive and often always present an opportunity cost where you'll be spending on their education rather than your own education, and this is solved with our financial incentives. But B, children are also a very significant time commitment because you have to be at home more often, which compromises your research or your work. However, this is solved by side propositions, childcare facilities. But C, to be very clear, this incentive does not push the educated to have more children than they want. In fact, it means that the educated can have the children they always wanted but could never have. So why is this a good thing? We see that it is a benefit in and of itself that parents are now capable to have children in the first place. And we say that this is very important because it provides the meaning as well as the gradual value and fulfillment from being in a loving family that cannot be attained by both parents. That can be attained by both parents and children. But secondly, there's another benefit because this means that for educated people who would have had children regardless, parenthood becomes a much easier experience for them in the long term. With more of a financial burden and a parental responsibility on site opposition, they're more likely to have conflict and resentment within their families because they see their children as hurdles and burdens and barriers to their career. But thirdly, the educated are more likely to nurture children who are able to make important contributions to society and revolutionize the next generation. Their highly educated background creates an environment which is conducive for academic or any kind of success. Their understanding of the educational system and their ability to provide academic support sets a very strong foundation for the children's overall learning and happiness. This can predispose a child to wanting to learn when they can see their parents enjoying learning, discussing their ideas, and engaging in thoughtful conversation in open society. To clarify to side opposition, we're not saying that we should disincentivize lowly educated individuals not to have children. In many countries, lowly educated families tend to have a lot of children in their families. We're not in a way discouraging them from having children, and they can have children. We don't need to incentivize them. However, educated people aren't having that many children, so that's why side proposition wants to target them. Now, moving on to second contention, how do we make a more enhanced future generation? Firstly, this motion ensures an educated group in the future. This is becoming increasingly crucial because we have had so many existential problems that the people of today are unlikely to be able to solve alone. Climate change, pandemics, changing job markets due to AI, intellectual output regarding these matters can literally spell life and death for states. But secondly, a strong educated sect of the population is also likely to perform important tasks we will need in the future incredibly well and ensure we're not in shortage of skilled labor. These include highly technical occupations like being a lawyer or doctor that can make or break lives but need very competent individuals to perform these jobs very well. Thirdly, this is an important demographic for politics as well. Note the high correlation between supporting equality and overall tolerance with having access to higher education. And this is because many racial and gender stereotypes are based on preconceived notions that are easily broke once you are exposed to more information. This is a group of people that, because of their greater awareness in the world, is also much more likely to support diversity and tolerance when they do get placed in seats of power. At the end of the speech, you can take away two things. On opposition, there are many professors and researchers who wonder if they would have been more fulfilled as parents. Government gives them a chance to fulfill both of their dreams. But secondly, we build a generation of children that the future needs most. Those who can perform the tasks of today to a very competent degree, and those who can solve the existential threats that we need to resolve.
Gov's policy is a scantily clandestine version of eugenics. In order for Gov's policy to effectively work, they would have to provide aggressive incentives that higher income class parents and individuals would be interested in taking. This is due to the following three reasons. Firstly, the individuals who have higher educational attainment are oftentimes the rich or those who have the privilege to finish university. Secondly, additionally, there's already an existing trade-off that being a parent cannot coexist with fulfilling one's career goals. Due to this, most university graduates do not prioritize having children. Thirdly, even if they're not significantly well off, the cost of having a child will ultimately be greater than the prior investments that they have made to complete their degree. Government now has the burden to prove why highly educated individuals having children is the most important of other examples such as tax reductions or housing subsidies. Note that Gov cannot just say that they will support everyone having children because resources are finite and they are just squirreling their burden, right? Note that if this stands, this lowers the impact of all their benefits. We would rather pump resources into equitable allocation of resources. This includes things like reducing inequality, placing resources into education, or supporting those who plan to have children. Things like childcare exist on both sides and are not exclusive to Gov. My first argument relies on how good parenting is not measured by one's educational attainment. The assertion to prove to you here is that good parenting is not solely determined by educational attainment, and that policy may inadvertently promote suboptimal parenting environments. Two premises here. Firstly, there's a reason why couples take such a long time to decide whether or not they want to have a child, because it is a lifelong commitment that will shape all decisions you make. And secondly, parenting is so much more than just intelligence. There are so many important attributes that make a good parent, e.g., emotional intelligence, empathy, patience, understanding, all of which are not necessarily correlated with formal education levels. The individuals of high educational attainment not even be good parents. Four mechanisms here. Firstly, there's potential for negative parenting styles. Highly educated parents can exhibit tiger parenting styles characterized by high expectations and pressure that lead to higher stress and anxiety in children. Secondly, there's limited time and emotional availability. Career-focused parents may have less time for their children, impacting the quality of parental attention and care. Thirdly, there's an overemphasis on intellectual development. Some parents may prioritize academic success over other aspects like social skills, emotional health, and creative pursuits. Fourthly, and lastly, there's a lack of parenting traits. There's a strong correlation between increased intelligence and lack of empathy, emotional intelligence, and patience. All of these become even worse when the state-sponsored benefits are waived in front of these parents. These incentives could lead to either one, parents overestimating the state-sponsored benefits and then having children, or two, parents having children before they are emotionally or situationally ready. All of these have direct impacts on the child. Three things here. Firstly, these children could be still born into neglectful, uncaring households. Secondly, when the parents aren't truly ready, they may over time resent their children. And thirdly, in these types of environments, children will still not be able to reach their full potential. These policies are especially worse because this is state-sponsored. This exponentially increases the likelihood of children being born into these types of environments. Second argument is that this would lead to further discrimination and marginalization of poor and other minorities. The premises here are that educational attainment is a discriminationary standard. Two layers to this. Firstly, access to higher education often requires significant financial resources accessible only to middle and upper class households. And secondly, minorities have historically been locked out of these opportunities and have only been able to attain them through a 1 in a million scholarship or grants. Individuals who benefit from Gov's policy will be disproportionately white upper class citizens. They are historically the group with the most access to educational opportunities, which will lead them to making up the most highly educated population. First mechanism here is that on the short term, this means that the state may shift resources away from welfare or affirmative action to this neo-eugenics policy. Second analysis here is that over time, this leads to a gradual decrease in the representation of minority groups in the population. The policy risks deepening social stratification, creating a society where the educated and economically privileged are not only favored, but also demographically dominant. This means that over time, class lines become more rigidly defined and harder to cross for minority groups. With diminishing numbers and influence, minority groups will lose critical mass to fight their rights and interests. The policy fails to address the root cause of unequal access to higher education, e.g. systematic racism and economic barriers. This perpetuates and even exacerbates existing inequalities. The more equitable and effective way to help future generations is through systematic change and expansion of educational opportunities. Very proud to oppose.
Just the opposition bench assumes the only thing this policy does is push the selective few to have children. In extension, I will explain how we can have better childcare policies that's not only benefit educated couples, but all families. Before that, some rebuttals. So opposition argues that this makes the current educated class less productive. Oftentimes, family and having children can be a motivating factor. Many researchers are burnt out because academia is all they have without a support system like their family. However, they cannot afford to have children and so don't end up having them. We also have more educated people in general, since the deputy extension explains why we push people to pursue an education if they're promised benefits. Even in this case, the research in the future is much more important, since it will likely be future generations that have to deal with the existential threats of climate change. Now, good parents, and they also say that good parents does not always come to the highly educated. Yes, we believe this is true. However, we believe it is essential to note that although they may not be the best parents, we believe that the highly educated have more money, meaning that they can spend them on children. We believe, however, understood, it makes sense that the other parents who do not have spare money will not be able to care for their children so much compared to the highly educated. Opposition also states that this is better to give benefits to the less privileged, and we exclude them from our policy. First, note that the opposition policy already exists. We concede that there's a
research trade-off, but we are not removing all ways of dealing with inequality. The problem in the status quo is not having children is very unequal, right? Now, wealthier families tend to have less children because parents are more focused on their careers, etc. While less privileged families tend to have more children because of the lack of access to reproductive health and other reasons. This is what blanches this out. Encouraging more children is a very good thing in general, but this is the educated who need to who we need to push the most. We are seeing aging populations everywhere without the youth labor force to support them when they retire. This is a problem in Japan, Korea, Germany, and many other nations as well. Moving on to the third argument, which is about which is that the motion encourages the state to adopt more progressive and ambitious childcare policies. So, Judge, right now, childcare isn't a priority due to other issues such as the economy. Due to the state's negligence, all couples find it burdensome to have kids. However, educated parents can pull up the state's attention back into childcare. Two reasons why. First, educated parents understand and care more about politics, making them a valuable and active voter bloc. So to win in the elections, every politician has a set of policies to appeal to social elites. When the elites now have children to take care of, they will demand a representative more policies that ease the burden of raising children. Second, educated parents share networks with politicians or lobbyists due to being college or alumni or working at related vocations. Hence, educated parents have more leverage and platforms to directly lobby for more childcare than the average voter with no connections to this whatsoever. Now, what do we derive impacts? So two impacts. So the first impact, the overall budget for childcare will increase, which means expanded coverage of child welfare. Opposition may argue that the motion takes away benefits from less educated parents, but in the long run, this increases the pie for all families, including those with one or two kids that were ineligible for childcare benefits. Consequently, we lessen the burden for poor families to raise and have even more children, solving the low birth rate problem. Right now, childcare policies only support kids during infancy, but once the children of educated parents grow, the parents will demand policies that cover not only babies but their teen children as well. We'll see reforms like better public secondary education, which weren't a priority for the state. Now, Judge, what will this lead to? This will lead to a better world where the politicians will actually make up these policies that are benefiting the children, that are benefiting the raising children, which means when these highly educated say that, there will be more votes, meaning that the people who are actually struggling because of this will be less burdensome, which actually promotes a better society for all. However, what side opposition is doing is that they're just actually cutting out these opportunities to get a better childcare, and we believe that should not stand. Because we also create a more inclusive childcare program to address low birth rates and others that are going to be mentioned by a whip and are already mentioned by our first speaker, proposition takes this debate home.
At the end of the day, none of government's benefits are exclusive. They tell us that they want more educated children who grow up in better environments. But note that you can still achieve the same benefits by investing resources into education. Government's policy is a dangerous one that justifies discrimination from the government. What they need to prove is why wiping out an entire demographic of people in the lower class is necessary in improving inequality. So before I move on to anything, a few responses. First of all, side government says that they allow smart people to have children, and this is important because they have rights. But note that rich people can still have children under our world. They're mostly the ones who actually have enough time and money to raise children in the status quo and can actually afford childcare. Governments already have disproportionate funds going to the ultra rich. Their world allocates funds in the wrong place, and their benefit is not exclusive. But secondly, government says that they decrease discrimination because people get more smart and realize how dumb racism is. But government needs to prove why specifically paying smart rich people to have children is the only way to decrease discrimination. Even assuming that this impact exists under their world, this is not worth doing when you wipe out an entire demographic of lower income, underprivileged people. There are other ways to reduce discrimination, such as other government policies, such as welfare, and also educating the lower general society. But thirdly, they say that they solve lower birth rates. But again, why is this the only way? You can support the working and lower income class to create welfare that allows more people to actually have children. Government needs to respond to the fact that you literally wipe out the entire lower classes in society slowly because the government failed them in the past. This is a dangerous policy that justifies discrimination. I'll take a POI.
We already said in our policy that we're going to make parenting easier, like having childcare institutions and services available in case parents need to work.
Sure, but this is for people with good education parents who had the ability to get tertiary education. This actively disproportionately helps the people with a higher income class. You don't have enough funds and fiat to ensure that you also help the lower class who don't have good education. So now my extension on reducing genetic diversity in their world. The premise here is that genetic diversity is crucial for the health and resilience of any population. It contributes to a society's overall ability to adapt and respond to environmental changes and challenges. But secondly, the government's policy, by incentivizing a specific and incredibly small demographic of highly educated individuals to procreate, risks reducing genetic diversity with the population. Four main layers of mechanism here. First of all, by encouraging a homogeneous group to reproduce, the policy may inadvertently reduce the genetic variability in the population. Genetic diversity is not just about health, but also about a wide range of abilities and perspectives that can be crucial in problem solving. So for example, under your world, you only have children who are the future of the country growing up in the same demographic of mostly rich, privileged families who do not know the struggles of minorities. But secondly, a genetically diverse population is more likely to possess a wide array of traits that can be crucial in adapting to new challenges, including those posed by diseases, environmental changes, and societal shifts. But thirdly, the government argues that increasing the intellectual capacity of the population will help in solving complex societal problems. But note that the intellectual capacity is not solely determined by education or even genetics alone. A diverse gene pool can lead to a wide range of cognitive abilities and problem-solving skills, which are essential in addressing multifaceted global issues. But fourthly, a reduction in genetic diversity can lead to unforeseen consequences, including increased susceptibility to certain diseases and a decrease in the overall robustness of the population. Two main impacts here. One, a society with reduced genetic diversity may find itself less equipped to deal with future challenges, particularly those that require a variety of perspectives and approaches. This could ultimately hinder societal progress and innovation. But secondly, in the long term, decreased genetic diversity can lead to health issues and a decrease in the population's overall adaptability, affecting the society's ability to thrive in changing conditions. This argument is important because we tell you that when you slowly decrease an entire demographic of people, this reduces humanity's ability to adapt in the long term to things such as diseases. We proved to you at our first speaker that it will be mostly racial minorities because of systemic discrimination that will be wiped out as a result of government. The only reason humans were able to survive for so long as a species is because we had so much genetic diversity that allowed us to adapt to consequences. So government tells you that we need smarter people to solve climate change, but their policy would lead to further vulnerability in the long term of the population. So
we see that it's really difficult to make everyone smart. We don't think their side can achieve it. Two questions in today's debate. First clash on which side further helps the families, right? Three things. First, we empower the families to have children, but why is this actually likely to happen? Like Annabelle already mentioned this, but to extend on this way more, two things. Firstly, we see that raising children will be costly, and it will involve sacrificing opportunities to like invest in your own education, right? Our financial incentives address this issue from the get-go. B, we think that the act of doing this in and of itself means that there will be more children, right? Second, we see that it's very beneficial from the get-go, right? We see that the ability for parents to have children is inherently beneficial as it allows for a meaningful and a fulfilling experience of being part of a loving family, which is enjoyed by both the parents and the children from the start. B, we also think that there's an advantage in that for educated individuals who have chosen to have children anyway. We think that parenthood becomes a more manageable experience for them with less financial burden and parental responsibility. We think that they're less likely to experience conflict or something because they do not view their child as obstacles. C, we see that there's also so three, they see that there's going to be tiger parenting, right? Two things. B, A, we already explained during our second speaker's speech that tiger parenting exists everywhere, not just the highly educated. B, also, why is side opposition assuming that tiger parenting exists for only the highly educated individuals, right? We see that this is a very clear contradiction because they have already explained that these parents would be too busy with work to care for their children. Why would they have the time to always tiger parent their children in the first place? Rather, following your own case, parents would focus on their own work. So this point is basically done for. Second clash on which side promotes more opportunities and development for society. We see that the proposal itself ensures like a future population with strong education. We see that this is increasingly vital as we face numerous existential challenges that today's population will struggle to address alone, such as climate change, pandemics, and the shifts in job markets due to AI and etc. Right? We see that intellectual contributions on this issue will have life or death implications for societies. B, we see that a well-educated segment of the population is also likely to excel in these crucial future roles, ensuring an ample supply of skilled labor. We see that these roles encompass highly technical professions like law and medicine, which can significantly impact lives and require like these highly competent individuals, right? Furthermore, we said this demographic is very important for political reasons. There is a strong link between support for equality and tolerance and access to higher education. We see that many racial and gender stereotypes are based on these preconceived notions that can be dispelled when exposed to more information. This group, due to its broader awareness of the world, is more likely to advocate for the diversity and the tolerance when in positions of influence, right? But then like opposition says that it's like better to give benefits to like the less privileged, that there's like other ways, right? We said the opposing policy is already in place, and we acknowledge that that there is indeed like a trade-off in resources, right? But we're not eliminating all methods of addressing inequality. We see that currently the issues that the distribution of having children is literally highly unequal under their side. We see that these wealthier families tend to have fewer children due to the career focus, while less privileged families tend to have more children due to limited access to reproductive health and other factors from the get-go. We see that encouraging more children is generally positive under our side, but it is the educated who particularly require this encouragement as a whole. We see that Asian populations without a youthful labor force to support them upon retirement are a concern in various nations such as Japan, Korea, Germany, and others. We don't know why they are mentioning these random points about tiger parenting and whatnot. So in conclusion, what do we do at the end of the debate, right? Three things. Firstly, we see that our side will help address these demographic concerns related to Asian populations and these declining birth rates, ensuring a already balanced age distribution in the population. Secondly, it will contribute to the development of communities with strong emphasis on education, creating a more supportive environment for children's learning and future opportunities. Thirdly, we say that these parents will care about their children more. There will be more families that can solve the Asian gap and etc. We say that lastly, it will help alleviate the financial burden associated with raising children, particularly for these higher educated individuals, thereby promoting family well-being and stability for the children. Very proud to.
We win this debate because none of government's benefits are exclusive. They need to prove why it is specifically wiping out an entire demographic of people that you achieve better education. We already give you examples such as better universal education to allow a more educated population rather than just pouring all your government funds to rich and privileged families. Now move on straight on to the responses. So firstly, government says that their side is the only one that is able to bring parental benefits. So our first layer of response is that all other welfare systems, such as employment opportunities and healthcare, should stay regardless, as they are a reflection of unconditional rights. This is much better because we continue to allow a diverse demographic, which is crucial in a democracy, and this means that we can also help like other parents, such as parents that are less privileged. But secondly, even if this is true, we don't think it really matters in comparison to equality of the economic state of any society. We think that if their policy passes, the people that are raising children will be taking the money that could be pushed to combat things like poverty, which are more important. And Gov also claims that money matters more than parenting in terms of raising children successfully. However, this is just not true, as they're both important, which is why we're trying to address the root of the problem instead of creating a shallow and just new eugenic policy. Now, lastly, they claim that there would be greater capacity for problem solving on their world. But actually, the larger problem in the status quo is that there's a lack of, or there's an inequality of resources, and because of the greed of the more privileged people. Why are these the real problems? It's because we know the solutions to the world's most pressing problems. So if we look at things like climate change, what we need to do is stop the largest polluters, which are corporations and other like privileged people and powerful governments. We're less likely to fix these problems because this new eugenics policy supposedly fixes the problem at birth. But the truth is, for as long as systematic issues exist, no amount of smart people in the world can effectively implement these policies or solutions. In fact, their solutions might actually be worse because people naturally problem solve for problems that they face, people from their groups. And the truth is that the most pressing issues in the status quo, such as even climate change, are mostly impacting the most vulnerable people that don't have the technology to combat all of these problems and etc. So I'll move on to the first main class of this debate, which is, will the policy actually wipe out or discriminate against the less privileged? That government claims that less privileged and educated people would have more children than the higher educated, which wouldn't completely wipe them out. However, we can see that even with this happening in the status quo, minority is still the minority. If we further increase the majority having more children, this just gets rid of any small amount of power that the minority has currently because of the fact that the majority just becomes way greater and overpowers them. But they're also claiming that with more smart people, things like racism would decrease. First of all, this claim is premised and reliant on the chance that the children of educated parents would actually be smart. We've already proved it's not guaranteed. Second of all, even intelligent people are incentivized to care mostly about their group, which would be the majority and the more privileged. This is just because of basic human psychology of caring more about your own in-groups than out-groups, and because even if these children are academically successful, this still does not guarantee being unbiased. The reality is that for the government benefits for highly educated individuals in the policy to exist, things like welfare would go away or become less for the less privileged, which is that they can depend on in some cases. I'll move on to the second main class, which is, what is the likely characterization of these educated people and children? First side, government claims that educated parents are likely to nurture their children, leading to smarter children. So firstly, there's no guarantee that educated parents will actually be good parents, especially since they'll be incentivized to have children by the state. This could lead to them having children while not ready, even if side government's assumption that educated people will be extremely interested in having children is true, there is a difference between being educated or smart and being good at raising a child. There's a possibility that parents who had their children when not ready could lead to resenting their children over time. But moreover, intelligent parents could have parenting styles that overly focus on intelligence or academic achievement of the child. This looks like tiger parenting, as we have previously proved, such as parents overworking their children that can lead to stress and anxiety. This is even more likely to happen because of the fact that there's a direct correlation between people with high intelligence and them having the lack of other traits like patience, empathy, and emotional intelligence. But secondly, even if we're charitable and assume that the highly educated parents would be nurturing, there's still no guarantee that genetic predispositions and nurturing environments would necessarily cause children to even be more successful or like solve all of the world's problems. So that government has no mechanism for why this would be the likely case. Thank you.
Judge, it is discriminatory prejudice to suggest highly educated individuals who have worked hard to be educated are dysfunctional beings and with low empathy. This was a very stereotypical argument to demonize highly educated individuals given by side opposition. For the promoting of our world, where we're not only able to make parents able to focus on work as well as raising their children, but also creating a strong and great new generation able to revolutionize our current society, I am so proud to stand onside government. So, Judge, we already stated that the reason why they're targeting like highly educated individuals is because lowly educated families tend to have a lot of children. However, educated people aren't having that many children. There were no responses to this point. Moving on to our first issue on families. So we empower the families to have children. So why is this likely to happen? A, raising children will be costly and it may involve sacrificing opportunities to invest in your own education. Our financial incentives address this issue from the get-go. B, we think that the act of doing this in itself means that there will be more children who are at the face of our next generation. Again, with less financial burden and parental responsibility, we think that they're less likely to experience conflict or something because they do not view their child as obstacles. Second issue on the newly formed child policies under our side. I told you in my speech before that there will be child policy on our side if the highly educated actually have their babies. And also this will benefit the less privileged as well who side opposition is still caring about. I told you during my second speech about how opposition policy already exists. We can see that there's like a resource trade-off, but we're not removing all ways of dealing with this inequality. The problem in the status quo is that having children is very unequal right now. The gap between the rich and poor. So what we're trying to do is what we're trying to do right now is balancing this out. And we are encouraging more children is a good thing in general because we tell you that it is the educated who needs to push this the most. We're seeing like Asian population everywhere, like I've told you before, without the youth labor force to support them when they retire. Now moving on to the third issue, which is on the opportunities and development. Once again, their policy is already in place, and we acknowledge that there's a trade-off in resources, but we're not eliminating all methods addressing inequality. Currently, the issue is the distribution of having children is highly unequal, and we believe that this should stop. And also, like we keep telling you these Asian populations are important, they never engage on this point. And also addressing their points once again about the unfair demographics. This will be known as future leaders, and we are also promoting education for everyone. We're not restricting education to one person, but any person who has high amount of education can have the benefits our policy provides. So what do we do at the end of the day? Firstly, it will address the demographic issues relating to aging populations and declining birth rates. And secondly, it contributes to the development of communities with a strong emphasis on education. Lastly, it will alleviate the financial burden on this, further making a family sustainability and well-being. Based on this, Team Ferrisfield should win the grand
Government
final.
falls in this debate because they are trying to do everything at once. The benefits of government are lowered when they claim that they are able to do everything at once. When upper class people are highly incentivized to have kids without the government waving funds in their face. Judge, the clear trade-off here is between economic equity and the neo-eugenic policy that they are somehow trying to protect. Judge, let's actively weigh what government has said in this debate and how we responded before anything else in this debate. Gov's main and only benefit is that they improve the quality of things like education, childcare, and because genetics are passed down, the children will be able to solve any global issue. Firstly, this is not exclusive. We continuously tell you that they're funding universal education so that children get this in the first place instead of children being of privileged parents. We tell you that this is better in our world because we still allow a larger demographic of people that have a say in education under our world. This is important in maintaining a functional democracy in society because you need different types of input. Secondly, government doesn't prove to you why, instead of favoring their demographic of privileged white people, these children in richer and smarter areas are actually likely to help the greater society. What we tell you is that they're more likely to create policies and innovations that benefit them instead of larger society. For example, if you were white, you would be more likely to create innovations for diseases that primarily affect your population instead of like things that affect the ethnic minorities such as malaria. We tell them two things in this debate that went very largely unresponded to. Firstly, I tell you in my model that government must be willing to sacrifice things such as tax reduction and housing subsidies. We ask them why this is acceptable when the rich will always be well off and individuals of lower SES classes will suffer under their policy. This went unanswered until DPM when they tell us that raising children is more important than equity or policies such as welfare. This is why we tell you that status quo is not enough, because it does not do enough for the less privileged. And this becomes so much worse on side government because of the fact that they neglect privileged people and depend on things like welfare. This is how neo-eugenics happen, because we're not supporting the minorities at all and only pumping resources into rich families. They assert the fact that their policy is more important than solving inequality, and they cannot win based off ignoring our arguments. Instead of responding to our actually important ideas that take their case down, they respond to one-off points that were part of a bigger group of mechanisms. We don't understand why GovWhip was so invested in the point of tiger parenting when I literally had 3 other mechanisms, including limited time and emotional availability, overemphasis on intellectual development, and lack of parenting traits. The bigger conclusion is that we have proved to you why parenting is not based on the amount of money you have. We see upper class families that are incredibly unhappy because the parents are focusing on their jobs and not their children. We're the only side that actually focuses on the well-being of children, and the only side that sees children as actual human beings and not machines that were meant to solve global warming. If government wants to create a better educated population, you can just invest in helping everyone. Their world is literally justifying discrimination based off your education and your wealth. Government needs to prove how all their benefits are exclusive, which is why we win in this debate. So proud to oppose.